You wake up. The alarm screams. Your hand reaches for the phone before your eyes fully open, a reflex more fundamental than breathing. Notifications flood in, emails demanding responses, messages requiring attention, updates insisting on acknowledgement. You haven't been conscious for 30 seconds, and already you're operating on someone else's schedule, responding to someone else's agenda, living someone else's priorities. You shower, you dress, you consume coffee like fuel, not pleasure. The morning news plays, disasters, conflicts, crises, a background hum of global anxiety that you've learned to tune out while somehow still absorbing. You commute through concrete arteries, surrounded by strangers whose faces mirror your own exhaustion, your own mechanical compliance with the rhythm of necessity. 8 hours, 10 hours, 12. The work doesn't matter as much as you once believed it would. The meetings blur together. The tasks multiply like cells, each one dividing into 2 more urgent demands. Evening arrives, and you're home. But are you really? The screen glows. The algorithm knows what you want before you do, serving up distraction, entertainment, content calibrated to your psychological profile. You scroll. You watch. You consume. Hours evaporate. When did you last feel something that couldn't be categorized as stress, distraction, or exhaustion? When did you last experience wonder? When did you last feel fully, dangerously alive? There's a word for what's happening to you, though you may not recognize it yet. It's not depression exactly, though it shares the same deadened quality. It's not burnout, though the symptoms overlap. It's something more insidious, more total. A systematic diminishment of your capacity for depth, meaning, and authentic experience. Your spirit, that part of you that once reached toward transcendence, that hungered for beauty and truth and connection, is being carefully, methodically dulled. But here's the unsettling truth. You've been conditioned to accept this as normal. You've been taught to call this adulting, responsibility, real life. You've learned to dismiss the screaming voice inside that says something is profoundly wrong as naive, immature, unrealistic. You've been convinced that the flatness you feel, the numbness, the constant low-grade dissatisfaction, is simply what it means to be a functioning adult in the modern world. What if that's a lie? What if the very structure of contemporary existence is designed, intentionally or not, to extract your energy, your attention, your vitality, while leaving you just functional enough to continue producing, consuming, complying? What if the life you're living isn't actually living at all, but a kind of slow-motion spiritual suffocation? And what if, even now, there's a part of you that knows this, that feels the cage even if it can't yet see the bars? The architecture of modern life operates on a principle that would have horrified our ancestors: the systematic fragmentation of human attention and experience. What you're experiencing isn't accidental. It's the inevitable result of a world engineered for efficiency, productivity, and profit, values that have nothing to do with the flourishing of the human spirit. Nietzsche warned us about this over a century ago. He spoke of the last man, a creature who has optimized comfort and security at the expense of greatness, struggle, and meaning. The last man blinks. The last man seeks pleasure without passion, safety without risk, existence without intensity. Look around. Look in the mirror. Haven't we become precisely what he feared? We've built a civilization that promises happiness through convenience, fulfillment through consumption, and meaning through productivity. Yet we're more anxious, more medicated, more spiritually bankrupt than ever before. Carl Jung understood that the psyche requires symbolic depth, mythic resonance, and encounters with the numinous to remain healthy. He spoke of individuation, the process of becoming whole, of integrating the shadow, of encountering the deeper mysteries of selfhood. But modern life systematically prevents this journey. There's no time for the unconscious when every moment is scheduled. There's no space for mystery when every question has a Google answer. There's no room for transformation when change itself is reduced to optimizing your morning routine or upgrading your phone. The problem runs deeper still. Aldous Huxley, in his prophetic nightmare Brave New World, didn't envision tyranny through force but through pleasure, distraction, and the elimination of depth. People will come to love their oppression, to adore the technologies that undo their capacities to think. You're living in that world now. The chains aren't made of iron, they're made of dopamine loops, algorithmic manipulation, and the constant promise that the next purchase, the next achievement, the next distraction will finally deliver satisfaction. Viktor Frankl survived the Nazi concentration camps and emerged with a singular insight. Humans can endure almost any suffering if they have meaning. But what happens when suffering is eliminated and meaning along with it? What happens when life becomes comfortable but empty, safe but sterile, convenient but utterly devoid of purpose? You get exactly what we have now. A society of the walking wounded, people who have everything except a reason to have anything. The psychological mechanisms are precise. Your brain evolved for scarcity, for focus, for deep engagement with immediate reality. Modern life bombards you with abundance of information, of choices, of stimuli. The result is cognitive overload, decision fatigue, and what psychologists call continuous partial attention. You're never fully present anywhere. You're skimming the surface of experience, processing but not experiencing, consuming but not digesting. Schopenhauer would recognize this immediately. He understood that human desire is insatiable, that satisfaction is always temporary, that we oscillate between the suffering of unfulfilled desire and the boredom of achievement. Modern capitalism has weaponized this insight, creating a perpetual dissatisfaction machine. The economy requires that you never feel satisfied, that you always want more, that you define yourself through lack rather than sufficiency. But perhaps the deepest wound is ontological. Sartre and the existentialists understood that humans are condemned to be free, that we must create our own meaning in an indifferent universe. Modern life offers an escape from this terrifying freedom. It gives you ready-made identities, pre-packaged meanings, and algorithmic suggestions for who you should be. The price? Your authentic self. Your spirit doesn't die dramatically. It simply never develops, never awakens, never becomes. The erosion happens so gradually that you don't notice the loss until you've forgotten what you once possessed. Your capacity for solitude, true solitude, not merely being alone while scrolling, atrophies like an unused muscle. When was the last time you sat with yourself without distraction, without agenda, and simply existed? The silence terrifies you now. It feels like emptiness rather than possibility, like void rather than potential. You've become addicted to stimulation, to the constant incoming stream of data that prevents you from confronting the fundamental questions of existence. Your relationships suffer in ways that are invisible until they're irreparable. You're present but absent, physically there but psychologically elsewhere. Your partner speaks, and you hear words but miss meaning. Your children perform their small miracles of growth and discovery while you watch through a screen, documenting the moment instead of inhabiting it. You accumulate friends on platforms while experiencing profound loneliness in person. The tragedy isn't that you don't care. It's that you've lost the capacity for the sustained attention and emotional availability that genuine intimacy requires. The neuroscience confirms what you feel but can't articulate. Your brain is literally being rewired. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for deep thinking, planning, and self-regulation, shows decreased activity in people who engage in constant multitasking and digital consumption. Meanwhile, the amygdala, your fear and anxiety center, remains in a state of perpetual activation. You're becoming simultaneously less capable of complex thought and more reactive to perceived threats. Your consciousness is being compressed into an eternal, anxious present. Cognitive biases compound the problem. The availability heuristic means you overestimate the importance of whatever information is most readily available, which, in the modern world, is whatever the algorithm serves you. Confirmation bias traps you in echo chambers, reinforcing your existing beliefs while preventing genuine intellectual growth. The sunk cost fallacy keeps you committed to careers, relationships, and life paths that deaden your spirit simply because you've already invested so much. Cultural conditioning ensures you mistake symptoms for solutions. Feeling empty? Buy something. Feeling anxious? Optimize your productivity. Feeling disconnected? Increase your social media engagement. Each solution deepens the actual problem, but the culture offers no alternative framework. You're like a person dying of thirst who keeps drinking salt water, each gulp increasing the desperation it promises to relieve. The workplace becomes a cathedral of spiritual destruction. You trade the majority of your waking hours, the prime years of your life, for the ability to survive. The work itself may be meaningless, contributing nothing of value to the world, but that's irrelevant. What matters is performance, metrics, deliverables. Your value as a human being becomes synonymous with your productivity. Rest isn't recovery, it's time wasted. Hobbies aren't joy, they're side hustles waiting to be monetized. Even your leisure is colonized by the logic of optimization and achievement. The collective impact creates a society of emotional zombies. Look at the faces on the subway, in the coffee shop, in the office. See the flatness, the resignation, the barely suppressed desperation. Everyone is running on fumes, going through motions, performing roles. The social contract has become, surrender your spirit in exchange for survival and pretend this is freedom. Question it, and you're told you're ungrateful, privileged, unrealistic. The system has achieved something remarkable. It's made spiritual death feel like maturity. Your children inherit this diminishment. They grow up assuming this is simply what life is: screens, schedules, stress, and the perpetual postponement of actual living. Later, you tell them, when you finish school, when you get the job, when you retire. Later never comes. The capacity for presence, for wonder, for unstructured exploration dies in them before it fully develops. The cycle perpetuates, each generation slightly more disconnected from the raw experience of being alive. The escape begins with a single, radical act. You must stop lying to yourself. This comfortable numbness you've accepted as inevitable is a choice, even if you've forgotten you're making it. The moment you acknowledge that your life has become a series of automated responses to external demands, something shifts. Recognition itself is an act of rebellion in a world that depends on your unconsciousness. Henry David Thoreau walked into the woods with almost nothing and discovered something civilization had stolen from him: the ability to live deliberately. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. You don't need to build a cabin at Walden Pond, but you do need to ask, what would it mean for you to live deliberately? What would change if you stopped reacting and started choosing? The first rebellion is against time itself, or rather, against the colonization of your time. You must reclaim hours that belong to no one, that serve no external purpose, that produce nothing. This terrifies the productivity-obsessed mind. An hour of sitting by water, watching light change? An afternoon with no agenda, no phone, no destination? This feels irresponsible, wasteful, selfish. Good. That discomfort is your soul waking up, protesting the prison you've built around it. The ancient philosophers called it odium, leisure, not as entertainment, but as the space where the self actually exists. Break the screen addiction with the ferocity it deserves. These devices aren't neutral tools. They're engineered to capture and commodify your attention. Every notification is designed by psychologists and behavioral economists to trigger a response, to create a craving to ensure you return. Treat them as you would any other addiction, with boundaries, with skepticism, with periods of complete abstinence. Notice how the first 3 days feel impossible, how your hand reaches for the phone unconsciously, how panic rises when you can't check. That panic isn't you, it's the addiction speaking. Starve it. Seek friction, not convenience. The modern world sells you efficiency, but efficiency is the enemy of depth. Order groceries delivered? You miss the embodied experience of choosing food, of encountering neighbors, of being present in physical space. Automate your bills? You lose awareness of what you're actually spending, actually valuing. Stream entertainment? You forfeit the commitment that comes from choosing one book, one film, one experience, and seeing it through. Friction forces presence. Difficulty creates meaning. The path of least resistance leads nowhere worth going. Cultivate what the Japanese call ma, the deliberate space between things. Not every moment needs to be filled. Not every silence needs to be broken. Not every gap requires entertainment. The space between notes creates music. Without it, there's only noise. Your life is currently noise. Build an emptiness. Unstructured time, silent mornings, walks without podcasts, meals without screens. In that emptiness, something dormant begins to stir. Find your people, but be ruthless about it. Most relationships are transactional, superficial, maintained through obligation rather than genuine connection. You need a few relationships of terrifying honesty, people who will challenge your comfortable lies, who demand your growth, who refuse to let you sleepwalk. The Stoics called it sympathia, a profound mutual recognition. Everyone else is just noise, energy drain, spiritual dead weight. This isn't cruelty, it's survival. Engage in practices that the modern mind dismisses as archaic. Contemplation, meditation, prayer, journaling. Not as productivity hacks or life optimization tools, but as ends in themselves. Sit in silence and watch your mind rage against the emptiness. Write without purpose or audience. Create art that no one will see. These practices don't produce anything. That's precisely why they're essential. They're rebellion against the tyranny of utility, against the demand that everything must serve some external end. Most radically, question the fundamental assumptions. Maybe you don't need the career, the house, the conventional markers of success. Maybe the life you're building toward is someone else's definition of achievement. Maybe freedom isn't retirement at 65, but living with less now. Maybe meaning doesn't come from accomplishment, but from depth of experience, quality of attention, authenticity of relationship. The system needs you to believe there's no alternative. Prove it wrong. Here is what no one tells you, what the entire apparatus of modern civilization conspires to hide. You are going to die. Not someday, not in some distant, abstract future, soon. Decades pass like weeks. Years vanish like days. The person you were at 20 looks back at you from photographs with eyes that still contained hope, possibility, fire. What happened? Where did it go? And more urgently, how much time remains to reclaim it? Death isn't the tragedy. The tragedy is dying without ever having truly lived. Reaching the end with your spirit intact but unused, your potential unrealized, your deepest self never awakened. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote in his private journals, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He wasn't being morbid. He was awake. Every moment you spend in spiritual sleep, in automated routine, in unconscious compliance with a life you never consciously chose, is a moment you will never recover. The ultimate rebellion isn't against society, technology, or capitalism. It's against your own tendency toward comfort, safety, and the path of least resistance. The world will continue offering you distractions, conveniences, and numbing pleasures. It will continue rewarding your compliance and punishing your authenticity. But here's the secret that changes everything. You don't need the world's permission to live fully. You never did. The dulling of your spirit isn't something that happened to you. It's something you've been participating in unconsciously every day, which means you can stop participating right now, this moment. Not when you finish this script, not tomorrow, not when circumstances are more favorable. The circumstances will never be favorable. There will always be obligations, responsibilities, reasons to defer your awakening. The prison door has been unlocked this entire time. You've simply been too conditioned to try opening it. What returns when you reclaim your spirit isn't happiness. Happiness is too shallow, too contingent on external circumstances. What returns is aliveness, the capacity to feel deeply, to think clearly, to love fiercely, the ability to look at a sunset and actually see it, not as aesthetic content to photograph, but as a moment of genuine encounter with beauty. The courage to pursue work that matters rather than work that pays. The strength to end relationships that deaden you and invest in ones that demand your growth. You'll discover something that contemporary culture has forgotten. Suffering itself changes quality when it's chosen, when it's meaningful. The exhaustion that comes from pursuing your authentic path feels nothing like the exhaustion of spiritual compromise. The difficulty of genuine intimacy is infinitely preferable to the ease of shallow connection. The struggle to create something meaningful from your life is the only struggle worth engaging in. The philosophers, mystics, and sages across every tradition converge on this truth. You contain infinitudes. Your consciousness is the universe becoming aware of itself. You are capable of experiencing transcendence, of touching the numinous, of participating in something far greater than your small, anxious self. But only if you stop betraying yourself. Only if you stop trading your irreplaceable aliveness for the trinkets and distractions the world offers in exchange. This is your life. Not a rehearsal, not a preliminary stage before the real thing begins. This, now, the person reading these words in this moment, this is it. Every breath you take while spiritually asleep is a breath you will never breathe again. The clock is running, the sand is falling, and the question that should terrify and liberate you in equal measure is this: what will you do with the time that remains? Stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for the right moment. Stop waiting to be saved by a relationship, a job, a change of circumstances. You are the only one who can wake yourself up. The alarm is sounding. Your spirit is calling out from beneath the rubble of routine and distraction and fear. It's not too late. It's never too late until it is. Walk out into the world tomorrow as if you've been granted an extension you don't deserve. As if each moment is borrowed time, as if the very act of being conscious and alive is the most precious gift you'll ever receive. Because it is. Let that urgency, that gratitude, that awareness of mortality transform how you inhabit your existence. Stop performing life and start living it. Stop postponing depth and start demanding it. Stop accepting the dulling and start insisting on your right to feel everything. The pain, the beauty, the terror, the joy, all of it. The modern world will continue its assault on your spirit, but you, finally awake, will recognize it for what it is. And you will choose differently, not perfectly, not without struggle, but consciously, deliberately, alive. That choice made new each day is freedom itself. Everything else is just more comfortable imprisonment.